C2 Wrestling Podcast back. Don't know the number. Will never know the number. I know it's not high, but I don't know how these podcasts keep track of what episode they're on. But we are back. Wrestling
We are
moves on.
back.
We move on.
Absolutely. Yeah. We are not too far into this weekly podcast, but if I can't keep track under 10, I ain't going to be able to keep track past that either. But I got to get a start. I just got to say, elephant in the room, I got a haircut.
You did get a haircut.
I did get a haircut.
I can actually notice. I can actually notice the trim at the ends. Shout out Sketch.
Shout
Oh
out
man,
Sketch. Shout out Sketch. Love that guy. Got a little haircut last night. Got to freshen up the look a little bit. Not too much off the top, but something,
it's
something.
it's funny because you getting a haircut just reminds me of when we had our old channel,
Mhm.
Tap Reactions. If any of you watched that back then, how many random people would say you look like Baron Corbin or Chad Gable back before
Yeah,
he um,
cut his hair.
cut his hair? And to be honest, it's funny. Like you have a great head of hair. I think Gable's got a solid head of hair. Corbin,
Yeah,
obviously, it was time for him to cut it.
yeah.
It's funny, like before they cut their hair, like I couldn't really picture them without it. Gable looks so much better with the hair like that.
Short hair. Yeah,
Corbin looks so much better with the bald
bald.
look.
Yeah,
I cannot picture you having like the same hair as Chad Gable right now.
yeah. Well, you'll never see what it's like.
Well, not until I beat you in a hair versus hair match.
Yeah, not until I lose a hair versus hair match. It's funny though too, man, because growing up, 27 years old, growing up, one of my earliest memory, truly, might be wrestling related. Like, you can kind of think back to those really early memories you have, and a few of those really young memories for me are wrestling. I very vividly, as a kid, remember. I think this could be my earliest memory. One of them sitting down, and all I could see on the TV, it wasn't even Triple H himself, but it was his Titantron was on the entire screen. This is back like Attitude Era, pre Ruthless Aggression. We were young, man. It's funny because I'm into a lot of types of cultures where the long hair is part of the look, things like that. But you got the Triple H's, the Jeff Hardys, guys like Test back in the day. The long hair, kind of stems from wrestling. I feel like that's part of where I get the look from.
I mean, I'm sure you loved a good Hardys versus Edge and Christian. All four of them, great heads
Yeah,
of hair.
absolutely.
That I feel like nowadays it's not as I don't want to say trendy, but like I feel like there's way more people with like long straight hair in wrestling towards that, mid to late attitude era compared to like now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everybody's got their own like style. I get it. A lot of the guys do look better, like Gable, Corbin, with the short hair. Another great name is Tyler Bate. He had his long hair. I think he looks better with the short hair look. But something about the long hair on certain guys, like Triple H has been bald for years now. Still not the same to me. Still not the same. Long hair Triple H is something special.
I remember when he first cut his hair and thinking like it was the weirdest looking thing.
Weirdest thing.
And then I just kind of accepted like, okay, this is just I don't want to say corporate Triple H because that kind of sounds like it's negative, but this is, I wear a suit now. I work in a front like the front office type Triple H. So I've just
Yeah.
like I've almost split them into two. Like the wrestler that I remember, even though, his final days as a wrestler, he still had the short hair and those final Mania matches and stuff. The
Mhm.
wrestler Triple H had long hair.
Yeah.
This Triple H does not.
Look at guys like Sean too, HBK. Him being bald is still so strange. There's that tag team match in Saudi that we pretend never happened. But
What tag
watching
team
that,
match?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Him bald wrestling, weird. Weird to look at. I don't like
Yeah.
it.
And then you go like Undertaker and Kane. Like I know
Mhm.
Kane obviously had it in a mask, but
Yeah.
I think in that match, actually, his mask falls off and you see his short hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Undertaker's hair obviously is not the same. You know, he still has a bit of long hair, but it ain't that full head of hair that,
Yeah,
he used to have. But
yeah.
anyway, enough of the hair talk, 'cause I'm sure people couldn't care less about the hairs of the world. You mentioned episodes. Actually, we both did mentioning episodes not being able to keep track. It reminds me that this Monday, at time of recording, it is the season premiere of Monday Night Raw. And I just have to say, if you at the beginning of the year told me like you have to guess when the season premiere of Raw or SmackDown is, I would have no idea. I have no clue what the grounds are. I have no clue of how many episodes they go. I have zero idea. It is literally like they tell me it's the season premiere, and I'm like, oh, all right, I guess it's the start of a new season. I
See,
don't
that's
get it.
funny. See, they've done this season premiere, so we call it, as if the show isn't, yearly. They've done the season premiere around September, October before, so it is kind of a custom around this time of year. USA week though, SmackDown, NXT, Raw, all on USA this week. We even got some TNA wrestlers floating over to NXT. Jordan Grace defending her TNA Knockout Women's Championship on USA this week. That's crazy to see. To have her go online and cut a little promo as a TNA wrestler talking about WWE week on USA. Crazy. This is maybe very forward thinking. Wouldn't it be wild if USA Network picked up TNA as well? Started
Yeah,
running TNA on Thursdays.
that would be crazy. I mean, I know TNA has their own streaming
Mhm.
platform, but it'd be great if TNA got on like Peacock,
Yeah, yeah,
like in
something.
some
Yeah,
aspect, you know.
yeah,
I know it'd probably be like under the WWE tab, but I mean, if they just had, even if it wasn't, you know, even if it was just like their DVD collection or something, like
something. Yeah. Well,
that'd
I
be
remember what was
insane.
it?
It's not
Wasn't it?
far-fetched.
Wasn't it like 2014 or so where there was a short period of time where WWE almost bought the TNA vault? Essentially, they almost had the rights to all of it. And that was right at like the heyday of the network. That would have been great content to have on the network now, Peacock, whatever it is. But it's crazy. TNA though floating over to NXT. That's only a small blip in what's to come for the week. There's a lot of great things. We're gonna have Raw is pretty stacked on Monday. 8-man tag match. American Made versus Wyatt Six. Fatal 4-way Intercontinental number one contenders match. I'm sure we get some Drew Punk fallout, maybe some progression of Gunther Sammy. It's a pretty stacked week. I'm looking forward to it.
Is this the only week all three shows are on USA or no? Like, I know they're
Um,
calling it WWE week, but isn't it going to be technically all three shows for like the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks
yeah, it's
until,
kind of. I think it's like USA month, really, something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, until they go to the CW. But hey, is what it is. The CW, they're promoting as if it's a pay per view, a PLE. They're really pushing the big show. On the CW. Looks like Julia will be challenging Roxanne Perez at the CW show, which I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Actually, I get it. I understand you want the big show on the network, the big match, but I think that's a Halloween Havoc match. I would imagine somebody comes out, somebody maybe interferes, something to maybe prolong it. But I understand they probably want that title on Julia, but I don't know if her winning it on the CW show is as electric as they want it to be.
I mean, I think I've said since day one, like we're gonna get those first few weeks are gonna be stacked. They're
Mm-hmm.
gonna want big moments. They're gonna want debuts. They're gonna want returns. So I can see them why they're doing it on the CW. Yes, it does feel a little lesser, but also like SmackDown's going to USA Network. I would assume the first SmackDown's going to be big. Like maybe we get the return of Roman for when they're on USA. Like I know Cody Solo is next. Who's to say that doesn't happen on the first SmackDown? I know someone in a comment on one of our videos had said Cody Solo makes more sense for the USA debut than Bad Blood trying to stretch it for, again, 4 weeks before that. So I think we're going to get a mix for NXT and for SmackDown where they're going to be shows kind of similar to those last shows before a big pay-per-view PLE where you get title matches, you get big segments, you get big moments, because it is the debut on a new network. I know USA isn't new to SmackDown, but it's still technically, or I should say
It's
USA
new
isn't
to
new to
yeah.
WWE, but it's new to SmackDown.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good change for WWE. Fox is obviously a massive, massive network, but the Fox run maybe didn't work out as they wanted to. There was a bit of a COVID stint through the Fox run though too, so maybe that hurts it a little bit. But I think WWE fits a little bit better on USA, anyways. The Fox run was cool while it lasted. It was not cheap, I'm sure. You know, I'm sure Fox paid a lot of money for SmackDown. I don't even know what this deal is for USA getting SmackDown, CW getting NXT. I'm not even sure where they land on that, but I think it's better for wrestling. I think the CW too, which is kind of an old school channel, man. We grew up watching SmackDown on Thursday nights on the CW. Fucking supernatural promos leading into
Yeah.
SmackDown every week.
CW 11.
Yep, that's it. I don't know. I think it's a good change. I want to see how they do. I hope it opens up more opportunity for them to do more, say more, type things. Obviously, Raw on Netflix is the big freedom we have now. But I would hope it stays the same for the cable. I know there was that been seeing rumors about a talent meeting prior to Monday Night Raw. Trying to stop the cursing on TV so much, things like that. I don't even think it's so much the cursing in promos as much as it is off the mic, when Punk and Drew are yelling at each other and the camera catches it. Those are things that once they're on Netflix, I mean, maybe they still take it down a notch. It's still TV 14, I guess, to a degree, but I think we're going to have a lot more freedom in that world coming soon.
I think the CW deal was for like 8 or 16 million a year, something like that. It wasn't like the craziest number, but for a developmental show, it's pretty solid. And
Yep.
then the SmackDown deal was pretty big. My biggest thinking with the SmackDown deal, like Raw on Netflix, we already know we're going to see some weird numbers for times of the show since they kind of have a ton more freedom. They can kind of, I don't want to say do whatever they want, but almost do whatever they want. USA, unlike Fox, zero time going over when SmackDown's on Fox. The blackouts, the bleepings, and the no time over. USA, I'm kind of interested because at first hand, I'm like, oh, well, NXT sometimes will go 15 minutes over,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But then at the same time, I'm like, well, Raw is a hard cutoff at 11. So it's kind of weird. I don't know what the deal is going to be with SmackDown. Now, I assume like day of the week plays a factor. It being on a Friday night, did they give SmackDown 5 minutes to run over, 6 minutes to run over when it's needed? Or is it a hard cutoff? All right, 10 o'clock show's over, hit that time. That's my biggest thing because SmackDown has been killed in big shows leading up to the Rumble, leading up to Mania, where you're trying to get everybody on and cram all these things in, and it's almost a detriment to be the main event because they have such a hard cutoff time. You'd almost rather open the show or be the top of the hour. You don't
Yeah,
want to be the main event because you're getting cut off. So
yeah.
that's my biggest hope with SmackDown.
Yeah, I mean, I believe this was Monday Night Raw, but even still, point stands. The Punk return promo, is the best example of that 11:05 ending making a big difference. SmackDown ending at 10, an hour earlier, I hope gives them a little bit more merit to maybe take that NXT extension, the 20 minutes or so that they give NXT extra. USA is losing an hour of Raw, losing 2 hours of NXT. So they're going down in wrestling content. SmackDown, the highest rating of the three shows, would be the show out of all three you would give a couple extra minutes to. So I'm hopeful that they do. USA Network's been great to us. I don't know if there's much else on the USA Network people are really watching. So why not give SmackDown 5 to 10 more minutes? Let's be real.
Yeah, thinking back, like I know you mentioned the Punk moment, the Dom and Liv first kiss
Mm-hmm.
happened off camera, well, not off camera, off the show
Yeah.
on Raw. But the biggest thing I think of where SmackDown was really getting killed was the entire build for Cody, Roman, Rock, and Rollins. Anytime they main evented, like they were short on time. And you have guys like Roman's entrance might take 5 minutes, it might take 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Rock promo might take 10 minutes, it might take 30.
Yep.
They were doing these segments that you could see they started rushing at points and they almost, you know, like in a bad way left you wanting more. In wrestling,
Hmm.
you always want to keep the people wanting more, not in those ways where you cut things short and kind of ruin a segment. You want those big moments to breathe and have plenty of time. So I hope it gets, 5, 10 minutes. I remember from when we were younger, when you went on to Monday Night Raw, it said 8 p.m. to 11:05.
11:05. Yep, it literally said it. That was the time slot, 8 p.m. to 11:05. And it used to run pretty accurately. 11:05, it would end. They usually didn't go too over that. They usually didn't end prior to that. The 5 minute buffer. Listen, it's live TV, guys. It's a show. It's wrestling. It's a show. Things can happen. Anything can change. In this era we're in right now, too, with the crowd being as involved as ever, the crowd prolongs the show a little bit too. You got Cody and Roman out in the ring, and the crowd is cheering or booing. These guys are taking pauses in between promos. The Rock is going on his own tangents, doing whatever the hell he wants. It's going to bleed past the 10 p.m., the 11 p.m. end slot. They're going to need SmackDown to get those couple extra minutes. It's not commercial free. You don't have all the time in the world. With that said, I believe they've come out and said Raw on Netflix will be commercial free. Is that correct? I feel like they
I
said that.
I haven't seen anything like that. I believe it is going to be closer to how they run PLEs where they
Agreed.
control the commercials.
Agreed. That's where I was gonna get into is it's gonna be maybe commercial free to an extent. I think we're gonna get a lot of the PLE, Tiffany Stratton promo in between the matches or the Metro, what is it? Metro
Chair
Boomin and
phone.
yeah. The Cody Bad Blood promo.
Yeah,
We're
the
gonna be getting
Snickers commercial, the
yeah,
Slim Jim commercial,
yeah, yeah.
there's going to be all new
Cricket
commercials.
Wireless, yeah.
Exactly, like all those things. But to be honest, as a fan, I need those. I know, like, look, I don't want a ton of commercials. I don't want commercials in big moments, but I need some commercials if I got to run to the bathroom, if
Yeah,
I'm kind of sitting on my phone, I got to do something, whatever. I don't want to try to sit down and watch 2.5 hours straight of wrestling without like a
yeah.
single second to breathe.
Well, I mean, more than we need the commercials, WWE needs the
Of
commercials.
course,
Like, in
yeah.
all honesty, I know they do the commercial free hour every now and again, but there's a reason it's a commercial free hour, not necessarily the commercial free show all the time, especially on Monday Night Raw. A 3 hour show on cable is really like 2 hours with the ads you got running. So it's really like 2 hours of TV time you're writing for. Man, you get rid of those commercials, you got to write a whole hour of TV time on top of that. It's a lot to get written down. The 3 hour Raw is here to stay. It's been here to stay for years. But we all know Triple H is not a big fan of the 3 hour show. He's always been kind of against the amount of time it takes. But, you get rid of those commercials. It's only like, it might as well just be a 4 hour show on cable. It's a lot to book for.
So with NXT and SmackDown moving to their new networks within the next week and month, Raw obviously we're still a ways away from the Netflix move, which I do think they're going to make a bigger deal for when Raw goes because although SmackDown has done better ratings wise, it is on Fox. That is why
Mm-hmm.
Raw is still the flagship show. I'm wondering what can we kind of expect? NXT, I think we have a better grasp on potential Julia, Roxanne at the first show. We know Punk's going to be at the first show. Randy will be at the second show. Probably going to be an NXT title match, potentially a fatal four way for the NXT championship. Seems like we're going to have the Rascals working in. Like we kind of can somewhat map out those first few shows. SmackDown, they've been promoting it heavily, but I'm sure this Friday we'll have a better idea what the hell are they doing for that first episode? Because it can't just be any normal SmackDown. It's got to be something good.
Yeah, it's got to be something good. Like you said, man, Cody versus Solo on SmackDown does kind of make sense. It wouldn't surprise me totally if they did that. I do think they're kind of leading that up to Bad Blood. an LA open challenge, title defense to some extent. I think when we get to the Netflix Raw era, I think it's very possible we get John Cena wrestling at that debut episode. I think it's very possible we get Punk wrestling on Monday Night Raw on that debut episode. Whatever they can do to really treat that show like a pay per view, a PLE. The SmackDown to USA, NXT to CW, again, we can kind of predict it at this point, and they are treating it like a bigger event. But that Netflix Raw move, that's huge. They're going to treat that like the next big thing. I'm sure we're going to be getting ads. I'm sure we'll be getting Netflix ads, maybe on the Ring, the Barricade, and all the movies, shows, whatever they got going. But as for the content we get, I think for a good few weeks, they're going to be really booking the hell out of these shows.
I'm trying to think of what it'd be Rumble build
Yeah, it
on
would be
top of
Rumble
that.
build. It'd be Rumble would only be a few weeks out. So I mean, it's so easy to have like a Punk chasing the title after losing to Gunther, maybe a Survivor Series. How do I get in the Rumble? I can't squeeze myself in. Last chance, number one contender, shot for the Rumble, whatever you want to call it. Punk versus whoever on Monday Night Raw, Dom, Mysterio, sure. Something to get them on TV. If there's ever been a wrestler that you can put in a match on cable to get people to tune in, it's CM Punk.
Yeah, I mean, he's been fantastic. We talked about it in our last Raw recap. If you're not enjoying what they're doing with CM Punk right now, I don't know what I don't
To
know
tell you,
like I
yeah.
don't know if you're actually a wrestling fan.
Mm-hmm.
And like I am the biggest believer and I harp on like the beauty of wrestling. Everyone can have an opinion. Not everyone's going to like everything. Not everyone's going to hate everything. And there's so much out there to consume that if you don't like one thing, there's probably something else out there for you. If you're not liking what they've done with Punk and how they've maneuvered keeping him relevant when he was injured and buying that time, like when he got hurt, it felt so far away
Yeah,
to him being cleared.
yeah.
And they booked it perfectly. I mean, it helped that it was you had the road to WrestleMania, you had the Mania Fallout, like you had all these big things to kind of distract you, but they kept him in the mix so well. Even him just showing up to random shows after the show just to for the live crowd to say hello, whatever, like it's been so enjoyable. And
Mm-hmm.
you look at him, he looks great. If he can stay healthy, like there's so many avenues for him. Raw on Netflix, he might be pretty much the face of Raw on Netflix.
Yeah, he really could be. And, it's evident, like you said, just looking at him, he not only looks great, he is loving it. He is having a ball out there. And it's a heartwarming to see. And again, this is not to compare it to AEW or hate on the company or anything, but you could look back at that AEW stint. He was not loving it. You can tell, man. Obviously, we know everything that happened after the fact. There's a big difference in that initial return run to now the WWE return run. Two different people we're looking at, man. CM Punk a year ago to CM Punk today, on top of the world. At the condition he's in, the state he's in, how over he is, will always will be. He's got a couple years under his belt still, at the rate he's going. A title run must happen at a point. CM Punk, the face of not only Monday Night Raw, let's say again, it's very well the face of the company at a point again. It's crazy to say, but how do you take him off that poster? Him, Cody, Roman. There's a few names that if you're gonna make a Mount Rushmore of wrestlers, you're gonna make a poster, a new promo to introduce the intro, whatever you want to call it. There's a couple guys you put right on that screen, and Punk's always going to be one of them.
I know we're just like broadly talking Punk, and I am actually wearing a shirt right now, but it does make me think about obviously Mania 40 was the biggest WrestleMania of all time. 41, they're going to go all out. It's in Vegas, no pun
Mm-hmm.
intended. I start thinking about the 41 card and not saying, you don't want Rollins to be injured, but They have the perfect holdover for Rollins right now. Once he gets cleared, once he kind of heals up, he comes back. He has his stint with Bronson. The timeline for Rollins is almost perfect for
Mhm.
him versus Punk at Mania, which if you said to me right around Mania time when Punk was close to getting clear, they're still going to do Punk Rollins, but it'll be at next year's Mania. It's like daunting to hear that. Like, how are they going to stretch such a hot and relevant rivalry a
Mhm.
year from now? Like we've seen them do it before, but it is as easy of a path as could be for Punk versus Rollins at WrestleMania 41. And it sucks because there's so many big matches, and I don't think that match would main event, but both those guys deserve to main event.
It is crazy because if it was Mania 40, that's the night one main event, man. By far is Punk versus Rollins. And it's a shame because it probably doesn't main event Mania 41, but that's okay. It's not like they're main eventing something lesser than that. It might be Gunther main eventing versus John Cena. Who knows? Like whatever main events over
The
that.
Rock is going to
The
be
Rock.
you
Yeah,
might have Rock
exactly.
Cody,
Yeah.
Roman's going to be a potential main event. Like it's
Yeah.
not like they're losing to
Yeah.
terrible competition.
Yeah. I mean, you can't expect them to have Punk and Rollins main event over like Odyssey Jones. Uh, so much for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Punk versus Rollins. It's a great feud. They still have a lot of legs to use on that one. The obvious like intertwined storytelling. They had Rollins special ref the match between Punk versus Drew. Rollins then attacked by Bronson. There's still kind of some Rollins Punk beef behind the Bronson feud. This is a funny way of viewing it, but I view it like the video game. If I was on 2K right now and I go to the menu and I go to a wrestler and he's got 5 boxes of allies and rivalries. For Rollins, that number one, that 5-star rivalry right now is Bronson Reed. But that 4 or that 3-star right under that, Punk is still a feud. Punk is still a rival for Rollins. I think they definitely rehash that feud. Like you said, they both have very easy ways to hold both of these guys over until WrestleMania right now. Punk and Drew, Punk going for the world title, Rollins when he does return going after Bronson Reed. They also have Rumble build. It's very easy just to have both of these guys wanting a title shot at Mania, trying to get into the Rumble, being in the Rumble. Then from February onward, you have the Rollins Punk build up the feud. I think that's almost a lock for Mania 41, barring any injuries or anything crazy like that. I'm all here for it. Great matchup. Obviously, it's something we wanted at Mania 40. Is it a little bit more lackluster now that it's not at Mania 40? The year delay, it still is great, but I think it's a little lesser being that it's a year later at Mania 41.
I want to agree with you, but I feel like once we get back into it,
Yeah, Mania
it's gonna,
season.
it's gonna kind of wipe that away. I could see this being booked very similar to how Kurt and Sean were booked for
Mm-hmm.
their Mania build. Maybe Punk eliminates Rollins in the Rumble. Both those guys are want their shot. Say Gunther's the champion, whatever. Punk eliminates Rollins. Rollins hops back in and eliminates Punk, and they fight outside after, and that starts the build, and they end up facing at Mania. There's no titles on the line. It's been a heated rivalry this entire time, but if I can't have it and you took that away from me, then you can't have it either. And then the match delivers. To me, I mean, this is probably, and I don't want this to sound like a negative, but this might be how you open WrestleMania night one. Like
Yeah,
this is like the ultimate. We are starting with a bang. This is the biggest WrestleMania ever. Every WrestleMania gets bigger and bigger. This one is in Vegas, going to be the most expensive WrestleMania ever. What way do you start it? There's a recent Punk opened the first AEW in Wembley. If he's not the main event, have him open the show because
yeah,
that's a way to get the crowd hot instantly.
yeah. It's similar to Cody versus Owens at Bash in Berlin. If it's not going to main event, it opens the show, typically speaking. I guess it isn't outlandish to say it fits in the middle of the card to a degree, but I mean, I know the card isn't really shaped up quite yet, but I don't know if there's a bigger match for night one outside of whatever Gunther's potential title match is than Punk versus Rollins. So if it doesn't close the show, it's got to open the show.
So let's pivot back to when we were talking NXT and SmackDown. I did randomly get reminded of one person who I could see returning on SmackDown, and this feels like the ultimate return for SmackDown on USA. We are nearing the return of Charlotte Flair.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
to me, I know plenty of people out there have their opinions on Charlotte. Charlotte Flair, we are slowly reaching we are needing Charlotte back for the big name factor. There's a lot of great women's wrestlers right now, but it feels like we're missing that like stamp of a main event with Becky and Charlotte being out and then some of your biggest names being intertwined in the same story. I know people have their opinions about Charlotte. I understand. I know how every feud for her is a title feud. I get it. But she absolutely elevates SmackDown's women's division as soon as she steps foot back in the company.
Yeah, I mean, I think a Charlotte Nia rehash for the title is due. I think that's going to happen. Bless you. Uh, I
Thank you.
think it's only a matter of time. I don't know how soon Charlotte's ready to return. I have a feeling she is ready to return, but they are holding off for the move to USA against something bigger.
From what I know, and this is, look, I am Joe Schmo, but somehow we'll sometimes find a bit of information. So take it with a grain of salt. From what I know, she has always been expected to be back around October. So, because I know there was rumors like 2, 3 months ago that she was coming back. Look, I'm Joe Schmo. I will repeat that, but I've always heard around October, and that was from a very credible source.
Yeah, I mean, I think the match that you're really looking for here is Charlotte versus Tiffany. In all honesty, and I think it's only an extension to get to that. A Charlotte Nia feud. Maybe there's a fall off there. Obviously, eventually Tiffany probably cashes in on Nia, wins the belt, blah, 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 blah. Maybe they have a small feud. Do you have Tiffany defend the belt against Charlotte at Mania? Does Tiffany win the belt from Nia at Mania? I don't know which route they're really going, but Charlotte is the main eventer of the women's division. That is that big name value that they are kind of missing. And if you're going to have her return, you're going to have her in that Rumble build. You're going to have her in that Mania build on the card. What's her Mania match? You don't really think they're rehashing a Bayley feud. She can feud with Nia. That's not really a Mania build. Tiffany's the one right now. I think the ultimate goal is Tiffany, Charlotte, Mania 41.
Yeah, I mean, thinking Mania 41, like, also, is Becky back for a Mania build? No, we assume Becky's going to come back. If she's back, who does she face? I could see her, you know, does Liv hold it all the way until Mania and face Becky? Like
Uh,
there's so many avenues. I think the only thing that we could assume right now, and these two names would be great names for a Charlotte or for a Becky, but we would probably assume Bianca and Jade will face each other. So those are two big names that are then going against each other. And then you start looking like at some of these big names they've all already faced. Like Rhea is massive, but Rhea just faced Becky at Mania last year, faced Charlotte at the Mania before. So you'd probably want to do something fresh for her. Who's to say we don't get multi women in one match? But
mhm.
if Charlotte and Becky come back, you know, towards the tail end of the year and are there for that build for Mania, there's so many big names. How do you fit them all into a 2 night card? Someone's going to get left out.
Yeah, someone's going to get left out. There's a lot of talent, a lot of matchups you can do. It's crazy with the idea of a Jade versus Bianca obviously happening, and Rhea is tied up with Liv. We have all these feuds. We can kind of predict what's going to happen. But there's also with the brand split, there's a little bit of some potential ideas missing. Like you look at Bianca, you look at Rhea, it's almost a shame they haven't had some sort of feud yet. Where do you make that happen down the line if you can make it happen? You don't want to let those two women get the Mysterio Triple H treatment of being two of the best, but never getting the chance to actually go against each other. Obviously, right now, Rhea's tied up with Liv. Does Liv hold the title till Mania? I don't know. I don't think she's the person that has to hold the title all the way till Mania. I think, she could lose it, even win it back. That's fine. I would like to see that title maybe change hands a time or two before Mania. I think Nia is going to hold the belt for a bit here. But do you have Charlotte return, let's say during this USA week or going into Bad Blood, whatever? She's clearly coming back soon. Do you have her return feud with Nia and not win the belt? Like, is that what you're going to do?
And honestly, like, I know people will be up in arms if she returns and is immediately going for the title. I'm more so I'm thinking like she needs to be in a non-title feud just to enhance other stories. Like Charlotte not going for the title, her feud is relevant on its own because she's Charlotte Flair. She's the main
Mm-hmm.
eventer. It is the same thing for when Punk isn't going for the title or Drew isn't going for the title and you're a main eventer, whatever else you're doing is still big because you're at that level. So for me, like I hope for when she does return, she doesn't face Nia right away, but it seems kind of likely. Like we'll get Nia and Bailey again. And then after that, who would even be next for Nia? It feels like it would be Charlotte.
Yeah, it feels like it'd be Charlotte. Maybe for a buffer, you squeeze like a Naomi in there or something. Just to fill some feud. But it's tough. A lot of these women. I mean, I don't want to say a lot of them, but Bailey, Becky, Charlotte, Rhea, even now Bianca. Like they've all been around the block enough. They've all wrestled for the most part, faced each other. There's not really matches that we need to see rehashed there. We don't need Rhea versus Charlotte again, Rhea versus Becky again, the Mania matches you had mentioned. Any sort of Bailey, Charlotte, Bailey, Becky combination again. Been there, done that. We need some fresh matchups. We have fresh talent with names like Tiffany Stratton and even somebody like Lyra Valkyria, who is not maybe to the extent of Tiffany right now, maybe not to the love that Tiffany's getting right now. Tiffany's over. But, it's something different. If they can build her up pre Mania, I'd almost rather that than see the same rehash over and over again.
One name that I'd feel wrong not mentioning that I do hope does get a big Mania match, whether it's multi-person, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's for a title, whatever. I do think Chelsea Green does need a relevant story. I know she showed up on NXT last night. They've kind of simmered a little bit with Chelsea. I mean, we've had a lot of her just backstage. She's deserving of a top tier story. And like, look, Charlotte versus Nia probably is the most likely return feud,
Mm-hmm.
but I would absolutely love if, the second week of SmackDown on USA, whatever, Chelsea's in the middle of the ring, dressed like Miss Liberty or something, trying to be Miss USA or whatever, and Charlotte interrupts her and it sets up Charlotte versus Chelsea. And even if it's just a couple weeks that it happens on SmackDown, I think Chelsea Green needs some relevant, feuds. Not saying what she's
Yeah,
done isn't relevant, but she's
some
kind
a
of
bit
getting a
more
little,
relevant.
yeah, she's not getting the proper time.
Yeah, she is clearly over though, Chelsea Green, and she is doing her best to make what she's got going on work, and it's working. I think she is the perfect person, and she's in a perfect spot right now. I don't think it happens at 41. Don't get me wrong. Eventually, at some point, they will find a way to squeeze Chelsea in to a feud, a title match, maybe even winning the title. And Chelsea is the perfect person gimmick where whenever that does happen, it's gonna go over big time. That's gonna be big for her winning the belt down the line if she ever does. Have a couple names, Naomi, Chelsea Green on Raw. They got names like Lyra again that they can utilize to help feud with these people to make some fresh matchups leading into Mania, at Mania, whatever it is. Again, if Becky is to return and go to Raw, man, honestly, Becky, even more than Charlotte right now, we've seen it all with Becky. I'm not even going to lie. In all honesty, I don't need Becky to return at this point in time. Becky is better off TV at moment. There's a point, even somebody like Rollins has hit that point. Rollins is fantastic, but there's a point where you've almost been on TV so much that you can take time off. It's better for you to take time off. Sheamus was there for a while. Sheamus got this is years ago, but Sheamus is one of the goats, but was so stale at a point, just on TV straight for years, the same running gimmick. We got to pause it for a bit, take them off TV, let them figure it out, come back, and they're fresh again. More people come around, more people debut, fresh matchups. There's a lot going on with the women right now. There's obviously women's tag titles too. Those are locked up on Bianca and Jade. They clearly come off Bianca and Jade leading into that feud going into Mania. But I wanted to bring up Liv again. Liv, Rhea, that feud doesn't extend till Mania. There's no way it extends till Mania. So if you're going to leave that world title on Liv till Mania, what do you do? Is it Liv versus Becky? Like, if Becky returns, what do you do at Mania?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're obviously going to have the Rumble winner, and that could open up someone from SmackDown going to Raw. I don't know what Raquel's situation is. I do think when
Mm-hmm.
Raquel eventually comes back, if she does, a Liv Raquel feud for the title makes perfect sense. I believe
Yeah.
were they also former tag champs together? I think they were.
Yes. Yeah, they were. Yeah,
Yeah, I
they
mean,
were.
there's so many combinations, but I think Raquel is someone that as soon as she comes back is just immediately into the mix, like she
Yeah.
was when she had her short, brief return.
Return.
Not to take too much of a pivot here in the podcast, but one thing I did want to talk about, and since we're on the topic of Raw, this past Monday was the debut of Joe Tessitore on Monday Night
Mm-hmm.
Raw. And I saw mostly positive,
Mm-hmm.
some negative. A lot of people, I was very happy to see a lot of people were willing to be patient. You know, Jimmy Smith, Adnan Virk, even Kevin Patrick to an extent, a lot of them, like it was dead on arrival.
Yeah.
Joe Tessitore, now, as a college football and boxing fan, I've always been a fan. I think he's got a fantastic voice. I think he had a great debut. Obviously, there's things that he'll have to work on that'll get better. But I did like seeing the amount of people who realized like this is a professional voice, and you can see like the type of professionalism and the type of legitimacy that he brings when commentating as to why WWE has put him into this position.
Yeah, WWE for years, I'm sure, has been wanting, searching for a legit, real voice. Not that Cole isn't or anything, but a real commentator, somebody that's a name outside of pro wrestling, something to bring in again people. Joe Tessitore is the name for it. I thought he was great. It is a little reading off a script. It's day one. That is okay. He is a wrestling fan. He knows the names. Listen, I don't know if I expect him to know all the moves. I'm sure he knows what the crossroads is. I don't know if he's going to be calling out a kitchen sink if that ever gets hit. But he'll get there is my point. I did notice even when watching Raw, if they were to go close up on commentary, you can kind of see Joe Tessitore would be talking, but he'd be looking down. He'd be kind of reading off his notes as he was talking. It's day one again. It just takes a few weeks, a few more shows to kind of get in the flow. Cole, man, he makes it look so effortless, so seamless. He's been doing it 25 something years, as long as I've been alive. Joe is great. He's going to pick up more and more. I think he is going to be the commentator they've been looking for. Maybe they switch the teams up over time, but Wade and Joe, Cole and Graves, I think those are the commentary teams for probably the next year at least.
If I'm not mistaken, Michael Cole was hired for, hired, he used to be with CBS and he was hired to WWE and he wasn't a wrestling fan, if I'm not mistaken. They taught him everything. I
Mm,
believe that's what it was because he started as a backstage interviewer for
yes.
those of you that don't know. Some of you listening, it was probably before your time. Probably don't even remember Michael Cole having guy lights in his hair.
Yeah.
This is a long time ago we're talking.
Yeah.
But Joe Tessitore, to me, I mean, the guy is obviously a pro's pro, but when it comes to doing wrestling, specifically WWE, there's like this base level that you have to know, and then you can work from there. And I think he has that base level. I don't think, and this is no knock on the legitimacy of an Adnan Virk or anyone else that they had tried. I don't think any of them were at that base level. Jimmy Smith, for instance, they weren't there and had to work up to that spot and then start going up. Joe is already there.
Hmm.
There's certain aspects like, all right, the women's tag match, he was mixing up the names quite a bit. Um, that's going to happen. Here's the thing, there's going to be plenty of matches where there's so many people in the match. You're going to have these slip ups. We are diehard wrestling fans, diehard our
Yep.
entire lives. We do it plenty of times. We do it
Yeah.
on this podcast
Yep.
where we either, and you just can't, you have a brain fart, you can't think of it. My biggest thing is people do not understand how difficult that job is.
Hmm.
Also, like with my experience of knowing how hard it would be to talk out loud, understand what your partner is saying, which for him would be Wade Barrett, and also hearing everything that's going on in your headset with a producer talking to you, an AD, whatever, and then also trying to follow the script, all while trying to follow the action inside the ring and it being your first time. Look, I don't know if they did any, you know, test shows for him. I have no idea. Test show for Tessitore. Sorry. That's awful. But I truly thought like that was, you know, when a rookie quarterback debuts, I don't expect him to throw for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns in his first game. Let me
Yeah.
see a couple of the throws where you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
understand. I
Yeah.
understand why they made that pick.
Yeah, Joe Tessitore, he threw a good 298, maybe a touchdown on Monday night. He had a
Yeah.
solid debut.
Yeah.
There's
Got
a
sacked
reason.
maybe from holding the ball too long in the
Yeah,
pocket, but,
yeah, yeah,
he didn't
yeah,
blow the game.
yeah. Didn't blow the game. Maybe had a good breakout 15-yard rush or something.
Yeah.
There's a reason a new commentator like this, they're not going to have his debut be the Royal Rumble match. There's a reason. It takes a little bit of time to come up. Again, he knows wrestling, he knows the names, knows the roster. I'm sure even if there wasn't like test shows, I'm sure there was practice to some degree, training, whatever you want to call it. I think he's great. I like his voice. I like the way he sounds. You okay?
I don't know if you can hear, a dog is going insane right now.
No, no, no. Braun Breakers outside?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am in Atlanta.
Yeah, that is true. You are in Atlanta, yeah. Joe Tessitore, though, man, it's a great addition to Monday Night Raw. Um, it helps to have somebody that's a wrestling fan. And you just mentioned Cole wasn't a wrestling fan. Not that it can't work if they're not, but man, the wrestling fans are ruthless. When you got Jimmy Smith calling it Summerfest instead of SummerSlam or whatever sort of mishaps he said, listen, it happens. But it was a little evident that this guy doesn't really know the business, like, say, Joe Tessitore does. And a name like that, again, that is bigger than a Mauro Ranello. They're going to do everything they can to make sure he is secure, knows the business, comfortable out there. I'm sure they are looking to keep him around.
Yeah. And I hope they continue with the foundation that they laid. Wade Barrett is a pro. I don't need Joe Tessitore explaining to me, you know, switching from a Boston Crab single leg to a double leg and then dropping down into an SDF. I don't need him to explain that to me. That's not his job. That's what Wade's job is.
Yeah.
And Wade does a very good job at doing that. I like Joe Tessitore in the moments where Drew McIntyre attacks CM Punk, and instead of playing dumb because Drew is standing right in front of him and being
Throw
like,
in a
"What,
hoodie.
what, what the hell?" He said, "That's Drew McIntyre in a hoodie." Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I want. Don't insult my intelligence. Don't,
Yes. Yes.
don't make me as a viewer. I understand it is a kid's show as well. I understand
Hmm.
there's little kids that may not be, may not understand whatever. We were all kids at one point.
Yeah.
But when the camera's right on Drew McIntyre and it's clearly Drew McIntyre, and there's very few 6 foot something, 200 something pound Scottish dudes, and it is quite obviously him. Don't have your main play guy sound like an idiot and be like, "Who is this hoodlum attacking him?" Have him just flat out say, "Oh my God, Drew McIntyre is in a hoodie," and just snuck attack CM Punk. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I want.
It's another discussion of the change of regime. If this was under Vince, I'm sure Vince would have been in that ear and Joe Tessitore, oh my God, who is that? Who's that monster in the hoodie? Oh my God, it's Drew McIntyre. Like it's
He
different.
just sent Punk to a medical facility.
Yeah, yeah. That really is textbook commentary. It's interesting. Triple H seems to have the whole roster, company, wrestlers, commentary, everything. They use logic. They don't treat the fans like we're inept, like we don't understand, like we're stupid. They don't treat us like that. They treat us like we're logical, like we get it, like we're watching exactly what we see here. If Drew, like you said, 6 foot something, massive guy. Listen, if he came out in a black morph suit and a ski mask, even still, okay, it's probably Drew McIntyre. But then, okay, oh man, who is this under the mask? When you got him in an unzipped hoodie with the hood kind of up and his hair is out, it's Drew McIntyre, guys. It's good to have him call it out like we see it.
If you're watching the video, we have the C2 Wrestling podcast debut of my cat, Tommy Boy,
Hey,
who has
boys.
retweeted. He was just hanging out by my feet, so I've brought him up to join the conversation. On the topic though of Joe Tessitore, I did think he had a great start, and I'm very excited for the future with him. One last thing I want to touch on before we get going here, because I know this boy wants some treats. There is one knock that I do have to mention with Triple H, and it's happened a couple times now. Some titles have started to get kind of lost in the shuffle
Mm-hmm.
and not defended. I saw recently on Twitter the talk of the Raw tag titles. It's been quite a bit since they've been defended. Now, I know they had Kofi in the backstage segment, but this isn't the first time that this has happened. I mean, the Logan Paul one was the obvious one. It's happened a few times where we have champions and they win the titles and it's cool and it feels relevant and they don't defend it for a month. And it's like these guys have titles, instead of just having, you know, you already do the interlock stories so well.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Yeah.
have the Judgment Day feuding with Rhea and Damian and Jey Uso, and also later in the night they defended the titles against the New Day. Whatever. I know it might seem like a throwaway match, but that's one thing that I would like to see enhanced a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I'm not too upset about it, though, quite yet, to be honest, just for the fact that I think I've seen the same post where, like, Judgment Day hasn't defended the belts. It's been like 70 days or something. And yeah, it's a long time. The Logan US title run, listen, I get that. Only defended it 3 times or so. It's a little different when the belt's on a guy like Logan. He's not
Yeah.
a full time wrestler, so it's a little bit more understandable.
Bailey was
But
another one that came to mind.
yeah,
She
that's
didn't
another
have that
one.
many
Yeah.
defenses. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, again, it's a comparison of the regimes to me though, where listen, would I like those tag titles to be defended? Yes, sure. But they at least also have other stuff going on. Wrestling all around the non-title defenses is still as good as it's ever been right now. It'd be one thing if Judgment Day hasn't defended the titles in 200 something days, like the Shinsuke IC run, and the main event is Corbin pouring dog food on Roman. There's a difference in the regimes again, where I can sacrifice maybe the tag titles not being defended for a month or two if Punk is getting the crap kicked out of him by Drew, if Bronson's this monster, if everything surrounding it is great right now, it's okay. But you do hit a limit. You do hit a point where, okay, listen, it's been 3 months now. You gotta, even if they're gonna retain the titles, they gotta defend.
Yeah. And I do think we are going to get that title defense soon. I actually think we're going to get them dropping the titles in, the not too far future. Not saying it's happening next week, but I don't see this title reign going on for the next 6 months. But that was one thing that I did think of that has happened a little bit on the main roster, but it does seem to be getting a little better. For instance, LA Knight wins the US title from Logan, and it is so glaringly obvious that title hasn't really been defended, and he's immediately defending it, does an open challenge. So it is a bit of give and take, and at the end of the day, they only have so much time. So I do understand
Mhm.
that, but it can get frustrating when you have these guys who are so talented and are so good and fun to watch and hold titles, and you want to see them defend it, and you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah, it is, and again, like you said, all this intertwined storytelling. They could also just have Judgment Day defending, feuding in between, but there is only so much TV time. It is easier said than done to intertwine everything. Speaking of belts, it leads me to bring up within the week, Karrion Kross had pitched an idea on Twitter about introducing an extreme championship in maybe a tournament style, hardcore title kind of extreme matches, extreme rules, whatever you want to call it. I think that's a great idea. I like that a lot. I think there's only room maybe to add one more men's title if you're ever going to. And I think at the era we're in wrestling, it's hard to deny a European title coming back, a European mid card title. But an extreme title, a mid card title, if you're going to do that, you have to put it on Raw. It's a 3 hour show. You have a little bit more time there. But you can't do that and then these fans still complain that the titles aren't getting defended. It's nothing's ever perfect. Is my point I'm getting at. The fans want the belts defended, but then they want this, then they want this. We complain about Shinsuke not defending the title in 200 something days. That's a lot of days. But then Judgment Day goes 50 days or whatever it is, and we're complaining again. Like, I get it. It's been 50 days, but there's levels to it at this point. Like you said, Kofi hinted at a title match. We're clearly getting it coming soon, at least a title defense, but there's only so much time on the show. We want all these things to happen. We want all these people on the card. If we would have got a Judgment Day title match on Tuesday, we would have been asking, why wasn't so and so on the show on Monday? There's always something.
On the topic before we wrap up here of the Karrion Kross, I do love that. I actually think that would be something cool for like social media or Netflix in its own aspect, kind of how they treat Speed, where they mention it, they talk about it, whatever, they may say the person's a champion. I don't need necessarily that to be a focal point on any of the shows. It would be something cool. I could see that being like a Netflix series where it's its own season, whatever. First few episodes are tournament matches, whatever, and then a few episodes of title defenses, number one contenders, whatever. And it's just like maybe it's 10 to 15 minutes an episode, just
Mm.
1 to 2 segments. Like, I think that'd be something that'd be pretty cool on its own standalone.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to just get again, I don't expect the extreme title to be as prestigious as the Intercontinental, but it's a good way to kind of fill time on these shows, fill feuds, get people on the card, but also have it be like fun matches that people want to see, you can't do a street fight on Raw every week, then it comes a bit watered down. But if you introduce an extreme title, you have that opportunity to do it whenever you want, really, So it creates a little bit of opportunity. Everybody loves a good street fight, extreme rules, no DQ, whatever it is, If we can get one of those squeezed into the card every now and again for a title, I think it's great. I would love to see them try it. Anything's better than a 24/7 title. So,
You know what's better than a 24/7 title?
what's that?
All of our videos that are coming up in our future podcasts that people need to tune into. What are the platforms we're on?
Platforms we're on: Instagram, Twitter, back on TikTok. TikTok has been working again for now. For now, thank God. It's giving us a little trouble at first, but you know the deal, guys. Go on TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Instagram. Give us the follow. We're posting content left and right. YouTube. Go down below, comment on your videos. Let us know, what title do you want to see introduced? Is it an extreme title, a European? Did you come up with your own title? I don't know. Comment below. We want to hear it. Like and subscribe. This is podcast number who knows what. We got another one coming at you next week. More videos in between. Stay tuned to C2 Wrestling, baby.